The warning sirens echoed through the crystal halls of the Villani council chambers for the third day straight. Ambassador Tolan pressed his six-fingered hands against the viewing screen, watching another red dot disappear from the galactic map. Colony 7-9 had gone silent 12 hours ago. Just like the others, the Scourge had found them. These weren't ordinary invaders seeking territory or resources. The Scourge consumed everything living, breaking down organic matter at the molecular level and incorporating it into their ever-growing hive ships. They left nothing behind except barren rocks floating in space where thriving worlds once existed. Talon's throat sacs inflated with stress as he reviewed the casualty reports. 47 billion Villani lives lost in just 3 months. Their most advanced weapons barely scratched the Scourge's by. Their fastest ships couldn't outrun the swarm's pursuit craft. Every defensive strategy had failed. The Council had no choice but to activate the emergency protocols. Tolan stood before the quantum transmitter, knowing this might be their species' final act. The message would broadcast across every known civilization in their sector of the galaxy. "This is Ambassador Tolan of the Villani Council," he began, his voice crackling through the universal translator. "We face complete extinction from an enemy that devours all organic life. Our colonies are falling. Our fleets are destroyed. We request immediate assistance from any species capable of providing aid." He paused, swallowing his pride. "We can offer advanced medical technology, star charts of unexplored systems, or territorial concessions in exchange for military support. Please respond if you can help us survive this threat." The transmission went out to hundreds of worlds. Tolan expected the usual responses from civilized species. The Karathi might send some outdated plasma rifles. The Nexus Federation could spare a few medical ships. Maybe the Trade Alliance would offer to evacuate some civilians in exchange for mining rights. But civilized species moved slowly. They formed committees, held debates, worried about political consequences. The Scourge would finish consuming the Villani homeworld before any real help arrived. The first response came within minutes, faster than should have been possible. The signal originated from a previously unknown star system on the outer rim. The message was incredibly brief. "Received your distress call. Send exact coordinates of hostile forces. What are enemy numbers and capabilities?" No introduction. No diplomatic pleasantries. No discussion of payment or political arrangements. Just a direct request for tactical information. Tolan stared at the transmission data. The responding species called themselves humans and came from a world designated Earth. He'd never heard of them before, which meant they weren't part of any major galactic alliance. "Run a planetary analysis on the source location," Tolan ordered his science team. The results appeared on screen moments later, and every Villani in the chamber stepped backward in shock. Earth registered as a Class 12 death world, the highest rating on their danger scale. The gravity was nearly 3 times what most species could survive. The atmosphere contained corrosive oxygen that would burn through Villani lung tissue in seconds. The surface temperatures ranged from boiling to freezing, often on the same continent. But the most terrifying detail was the planet's history. Earth had survived 5 major extinction events, asteroid impacts that should have sterilized all life, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years, ice ages that turned the surface into a frozen wasteland. Yet somehow, life had not only survived but thrived. And now that life had evolved into something calling itself human. Talon's hands shook as he composed his response. What kind of species could evolve on such a hostile world? What would they want in return for their help? More importantly, what would they be capable of if they agreed to fight? The humans hadn't asked about territorial claims or resource rights. They hadn't demanded to know the Villani's political structure or technological capabilities. They simply wanted to know where the enemy was and how many there were, as if they were already planning to destroy them all. The Villani early warning systems went silent for exactly 3 seconds before erupting in chaos. 3 massive objects had appeared in their star system without any hyperspace signatures or energy readings. One moment empty space, the next moment 3 ships hung in orbit like sleeping giants. Ambassador Tolan rushed to the observation deck, expecting to see the elegant curves and gleaming surfaces typical of civilized starships. Instead, he found himself staring at 3 angular monsters that looked like they'd been built for war and nothing else. Each vessel stretched over 2 kilometers long, their dark hulls bristling with weapon emplacements that Villani computers couldn't even identify. The ships didn't request docking permissions or diplomatic clearance. A simple message appeared on every screen in the capital city: Captain Tyler Blake, requesting immediate tactical briefing on hostile forces. No time for ceremonies. Within the Villani government, panic erupted. Their finest diplomats scrambled to prepare welcome ceremonies, cultural exchange protocols, and gift presentations. But before they could organize anything, a small shuttle detached from the lead warship and headed straight for the capital. The landing pad barely accommodated the human craft, which touched down with mechanical precision. When the airlock opened, 6 figures emerged, wearing what looked like personal combat suits rather than diplomatic attire. They moved with the fluid coordination of a military unit, checking corners and exits automatically. The lead figure removed his helmet, revealing features that would have seemed ordinary, if not for the casual confidence in his eyes. Captain Tyler Blake stood just over 6 feet tall, his brown hair slightly disheveled from the helmet. What struck the Villani most was how comfortable he appeared in their high-oxygen environment without any breathing apparatus. "Sorry about the rush," Blake said, his voice carrying easily through the translator systems. "But if these scourge things are half as dangerous as your message indicated, we need to start planning immediately." Tolan tried to begin the traditional greeting ceremony, but Blake politely interrupted. "Ambassador, I appreciate the hospitality, but people are dying while we talk. Can we skip to the tactical briefing?" In the war room, Villani military advisors displayed holographic recordings of scourge attacks. The footage showed massive descending on populated worlds, releasing swarms of insect-like creatures that consumed everything organic within hours. Entire cities disappeared under writhing masses of alien predators. Blake watched the recordings with the detached interest of someone reviewing routine security footage. When a particularly horrific scene showed scourge creatures dissolving a Villani settlement with acid secretions, he nodded thoughtfully. "Reminds me of the locust swarms we get back in Kansas," he commented. "Though our locusts don't use acid. We've dealt with worse during the fire ant invasions in the southern states." The Villani advisors exchanged confused glances. General Koreth leaned forward, his voice tight with concern. "Captain Blake, these creatures have consumed 47 billion of our people. They dissolve organic matter with stomach acids, stronger than industrial solvents." Blake shrugged casually. "Our kids swim in pools with chlorine levels that would probably kill your people. Summer camp pools back home use chemicals with pH levels around what you're describing. Builds character." The room fell silent. Dr. the Villani's leading xenobiologist, pulled up detailed scans of scourge anatomy. Their exoskeletons can withstand plasma weapons fire. Their reproductive rate allows them to replace casualties faster than we can inflict them. They coordinate through a hive mind that adapts to our tactics within hours. "Interesting," Blake said, studying the data. "Sounds like army ants, with better organization. We've got some experience with hive-minded insects. The key is disrupting their communication networks and exploiting their dependency on centralized command structures." One of Blake's team members, Lieutenant David Chen, was examining the scourge's acid composition on a separate display. "Sir, this stuff's basically concentrated hydrochloric acid with some organic enzymes. My grandfather used stronger solutions to clean his pool equipment. The Volani stared in disbelief as the humans discussed a galaxy-threatening crisis like it was a minor pest control problem. When General Korath mentioned that the Scourge had wiped out the most advanced military forces in their sector, Blake simply nodded. That's the problem with civilized warfare, he said matter-of-factly. Too many rules about what's acceptable. Where we come from, survival doesn't care about your moral guidelines. When something threatens your family, you use whatever works. As the briefing continued, it became clear that these humans viewed the Scourge not as an unstoppable force of nature, but as just another problem to solve. They asked detailed questions about Scourge reproduction cycles, discussed the logistics of supply lines, and debated the effectiveness of different extermination techniques. The Volani had expected saviors. Instead, they'd found something far more unsettling, a species that treated their worst nightmare as routine pest control. The Volani Military Command Center had never seen anything like it. For generations, their warfare doctrine focused on defensive strategies, carefully planned retreats, and minimizing casualties on both sides. Civilized species didn't launch aggressive attacks without extensive negotiations and warnings. The humans threw that rulebook out the airlock on date 1. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood before the tactical display, her gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She pointed at red markers indicating Scourge positions throughout 3 star systems. We're not going to wait for them to come to us. Every hour we delay gives them time to reproduce and spread. Her battle plan horrified the Volani observers. Instead of establishing defensive perimeters around populated worlds, the human fleet would jump directly into Scourge-controlled territory and begin systematic extermination. No warnings, no attempts at communication, no mercy. But Admiral, General Korath protested, those systems contain billions of Scourge organisms. Your ships will be vastly outnumbered. Stone smiled grimly. Numbers don't mean much when you're using the right tools for the job. The first assault began 12 hours later. Human warships materialized in the Keth system, where Scourge bioships had been breeding for months. The Volani expected to watch a desperate last stand, as the human vessels were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Instead, they witnessed something that redefined their understanding of warfare. The human ships opened fire with weapons that seemed to ignore physical laws. Energy beams punched through Scourge bioarmor like it was made of paper. Explosive projectiles released clouds of nanoscale machines that ate through alien tissue faster than it could regenerate. Most disturbing of all, the humans deployed biological weapons specifically engineered to target Scourge DNA. Captain Brian Murphy commanded the lead destroyer. His crew, working with mechanical precision, released the viral packages, he ordered calmly. Make sure every Scourge ship gets a full dose. Ambassador Tolan watched the battle footage in stunned silence. Clouds of microscopic organisms spread from human ships, seeking out Scourge vessels, and beginning immediate biological warfare at the cellular level. The aliens' own bodies turned against them as engineered viruses, rewrote their genetic code from the inside out. But the most shocking aspect wasn't the weapons themselves. It was how casually the humans operated in conditions that would kill any other known species. When Scourge ships released acid clouds that dissolved metal, human soldiers simply sealed their armor and continued fighting. When battles moved into the vacuum of space, human troops maneuvered as easily as if they were walking on solid ground. Commander Joel Harrison led a boarding party onto a massive Scourge bioship, his team moving through corridors filled with corrosive atmosphere. Oxygen contents at 0, temperatures -40 Celsius, and there's enough acid in the air to melt our old equipment, he reported over the COM system. Good thing we upgraded the gear last month. His soldiers advanced through conditions that would have been instantly fatal to Volani forces, their environmental suits protecting them from hazards that registered off the scale of normal measuring devices. They worked alongside artificial intelligences that calculated optimal attack patterns in real time, adjusting tactics faster than any organic brain could process information. The AI systems particularly disturbed the Villani observers. These weren't simple computer programs, but sophisticated entities that seemed to think and reason independently. They coordinated with human soldiers seamlessly, sharing tactical data and predicting enemy movements with terrifying accuracy. Is that artificial intelligence helping your soldiers? Dr. Mireth asked nervously. That's Area 7, Stone explained. She's been with the fleet for 3 years now, great at pattern recognition and strategic planning. The troops love working with her. The casual way humans partnered with artificial minds violated another fundamental principle of civilized society. Most species considered true AI too dangerous to create, fearing it would eventually turn against its creators. But humans treated their artificial partners like trusted colleagues. As the assault continued, Tolan began to understand the true scope of human capabilities. They weren't just fighting the Scourge with superior weapons. They were dismantling a galaxy-threatening enemy, using techniques that other species had never imagined. The humans approached warfare like they approached everything else on their deadly homeworld, with practical efficiency and complete disregard for what others considered impossible. They turned the Scourge's own biology against them, operated in environments that would kill most life forms, and coordinated with artificial minds that calculated death with mathematical precision. Watching the systematic destruction of Scourge forces, Tolan realized the Villani hadn't just called for help. They had awakened something far more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. The mobile laboratory ship, Darwin's Revenge, had been in Scourge territory for only 6 days. But Dr. Jennifer Hayes and her research team were already producing results that defied everything the Villani knew about biological warfare. While other species would have needed years to analyze alien DNA, the humans had weaponized it in less than a week. The beautiful thing about evolution, Dr. Hayes explained to a group of stunned Villani scientists, is that it gives you a toolkit for survival. Back on Earth, we've been fighting viruses, bacteria, and parasites for millions of years. Our immune systems learned every dirty trick in the book. She gestured to a containment unit holding what looked like ordinary Earth bacteria. This little guy used to cause food poisoning in humans. We modified its protein structure to specifically target Scourge reproduction organs. Their biology is so specialized that one genetic tweak turns their own cellular processes against them. Ambassador Tolan watched through the reinforced viewing window as human scientists worked with deadly pathogens, like they were handling household items. They wore minimal protective equipment. Their enhanced immune systems apparently capable of fighting off biological agents that would kill most species. Within minutes, the speed of their adaptation was terrifying. When Scourge forces began developing resistance to the first wave of biological weapons, the humans simply created new ones. Dr. Hayes' team pulled samples from Earth's most hostile environments, modifying extremophile bacteria that thrived in acid, radiation, and temperatures that would sterilize normal life. Meanwhile, Colonel Austin Davis was implementing what he cheerfully called pest control with extreme prejudice on the ground. His forces moved through former Scourge breeding colonies with equipment that seemed more suited for environmental cleanup than military operations. The key to dealing with any infestation, Davis explained while his soldiers deployed clouds of microscopic machines, is making sure nothing can grow back. These nanites will break down any organic material at the molecular level and convert it into harmless compounds. The Villani observers watched in horror as entire Scourge dissolved into gray dust within minutes. The quantum-engineered nanites didn't just kill the alien organisms. They eliminated every trace that they had ever existed. Even Scourge spores designed to survive in vacuum for centuries crumbled into component atoms. Isn't this dangerous too? Your own people, General Korath asked nervously. Davis shrugged. The nanites are programmed to recognize human DNA signatures and avoid us completely. Plus, we've all got genetic markers that make us immune to the breakdown process. Standard procedure for this kind of work. The casual way humans discussed rewriting the fundamental laws of biology left the Villani speechless. These weren't desperate measures implemented in the heat of battle. This was routine pest control methodology that suggested Earth had faced similar threats before. But the most unsettling moment came when the Scourge Queenmind, the central intelligence controlling billions of alien organisms, attempted psychological warfare. Massive bioships positioned themselves throughout the system and began broadcasting telepathic images designed to break enemy morale. The broadcasts showed consumed civilizations, dying worlds, and the screams of billions of victims, as the Scourge devoured everything they had ever loved. The images were so vivid and horrifying that several Villani personnel required medical treatment for psychological trauma. The human response was immediate and devastating. "Oh, you want to play the scary movie game?" Colonel Davis said, activating the human fleet's communication systems. "Let us show you what real extinction events look like." The humans transmitted footage from Earth's geological history. The asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years, ice ages that turned the planet into a frozen wasteland. But they didn't stop with natural disasters. They showed predator-prey relationships, where creatures evolved specifically to hunt and kill other species. Time-lapse footage of evolution itself, where entire species disappeared, not through external catastrophe, but through simple competitive pressure from better adapted organisms. This is what we call Tuesday morning nature documentaries. Davis's voice accompanied the broadcasts. "Our kids watch this stuff while eating breakfast cereal. We're from a world that tried to kill us every single day for 4 billion years. We didn't just survive it. We learned to love the challenge." The psychological warfare backfired spectacularly. Instead of breaking human morale, the Queenmind's broadcasts had triggered what could only be described as nostalgic fondness. Human soldiers began sharing their own stories about surviving Earth's hostile environment, trading tales of dangerous wildlife encounters, like they were discussing weekend camping trips. Dr. Hayes put it best during a conversation with Ambassador Tolan. "The Scourge think they're the ultimate predators because they can consume other species, but they've never faced prey that evolved to be more dangerous than its predators. On Earth, everything's trying to kill everything else all the time. That's not horror, that's just home." As the campaign continued, the Villani began to understand that they hadn't just summoned military allies. They had awakened a species that viewed galaxy-threatening extinction events as mild environmental challenges, and whose response to ultimate horror was casual professional interest. The silence in the former Scourge territory was absolute, where massive bioships had once swarmed through star systems like clouds of locusts. Nothing remained except empty space and the occasional drift of metallic debris. The humans hadn't just defeated the galaxy-devouring threat. They had erased it so completely that future scientists would struggle to prove the Scourge had ever existed at all. Ambassador Talon floated in his observation pod above what had once been the Scourge's primary breeding world. The planet below looked pristine, its atmosphere clear, and its surface showing no signs of the massive alien infestation that had covered it just weeks earlier. Human terraforming crews were already preparing it for colonization, their massive machines reshaping continents with casual efficiency. The speed of the victory had shocked every civilized species in the galaxy. Military analysts had predicted the war would last decades, possibly centuries. Instead, the humans had systematically hunted down and eliminated every Scourge organism in less than 2 months. Not just the warriors and workers, but every spore, every egg, every microscopic trace of alien DNA. Dr. Catherine Wells, the chief xenobiologist aboard the human science vessel, had explained their methodology to a gathering of alien researchers. Complete extinction requires attention to detail, she had said matter-of-factly. You can't leave anything behind that might adapt or evolve. We learned that lesson dealing with invasive species on Earth. The humans had treated the galaxy's greatest threat like crabgrass in their backyard. They identified every possible hiding place, tracked down every reproduction cycle, and systematically eliminated each biological pathway that could lead to scourge survival. Their quantum nanites had scrubbed entire star systems clean of alien organic material, breaking it down to component atoms and recycling it into useful resources. Now, representatives from dozens of grateful civilizations had gathered in the Volani capital to thank their saviors. The great assembly hall buzzed with nervous energy as diplomats and military leaders tried to process what they had witnessed. Ancient species that had survived for millennia spoke in hushed tones about the humans' casual efficiency in warfare. Admiral Rebecca Stone stepped up to the speaking platform, her simple military uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial robes worn by other delegates. She looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just finished a challenging but routine job. "Friends and allies," she began, her voice carrying easily through the translator systems. "I know many of you have questions about how we accomplished what your military experts said was impossible. The answer is actually pretty simple." She activated a holographic display showing Earth from space, its blue and green surface marbled with swirling clouds. To most species, it looked beautiful. To those who understood its classification as a Class 12 death world, it represented barely contained violence. Earth has survived 5 major extinction events, Stone continued. Asteroid impacts that sterilized continents, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years, ice ages that turned our world into a frozen wasteland. Each time, life found a way to not just survive, but to come back stronger than before. The assembled aliens shifted uncomfortably as images flashed across the display. Massive predators hunting in prehistoric oceans, volcanic eruptions that dwarfed stellar engineering projects, weather systems that regularly produced storms capable of leveling cities. "We didn't reach the stars, despite our world's hostility," Stone explained. "We reached them because of it. Every challenge that Earth threw at us made us tougher, smarter, more adaptable. What you call impossible odds, we call Tuesday afternoon." Behind her, the display showed human colony ships already departing for systems that had once been scourge territory. Massive vessels filled with families, scientists, and terraforming equipment headed for worlds that other species would consider uninhabitable. The humans planned to turn former battlefields into thriving colonies within a generation. "The scourge consumed 47 billion of your people," Stone continued, "and we understand that represents an unimaginable tragedy. But from our perspective, they were just another predator that needed to be managed. On Earth, we deal with species that try to consume everything around them all the time. The key is understanding that nature doesn't negotiate." Ambassador Tolan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the assembly hall's temperature. The humans spoke about galactic extinction threats the way other species discussed weather patterns. They had solved the scourge problem, not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through the casual application of survival instincts honed across geological timescales. As Admiral Stone concluded her remarks and stepped down from the platform, the assembled delegates began to grasp the full implications of what they had witnessed. The grateful species had expected to thank heroic saviors who had made noble sacrifices to protect the innocent. Instead, they found themselves face to face with something far more unsettling, a species that had evolved beyond their understanding of survival itself. The humans hadn't rescued the galaxy out of altruism or moral obligation. They had simply encountered a pest problem and dealt with it using methods that came as naturally as breathing. The Volani had broadcast a desperate plea for aid, expecting to receive help from fellow civilized beings. What had answered their call was something that made the Scourge look like a minor environmental hazard. They had awakened Earth's children, and those children were already claiming their inheritance among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same.